Hello and welcome to MySecurityTV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name's Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor with MySecurity Media, and today we're with WP Engine. We're going to be looking at the WordPress Economy. This is hot off the press. They've just released the WordPress Economy study, and WordPress is set to grow to $636 billion. This is just in 1 year. As I understand it. So we're going to hear more from Ricky Blacker, the pre-sales engineer and WordPress Evangelist, and the boss there, country manager and VP sales for the Asia Pacific region, Mark Randall. So looking forward to bringing the gents on very shortly. Here, Mark Randall, the country manager, VP sales for the Asia Pacific, and Ricky Blacker, pre-sales engineer and the WordPress Evangelist. And the Evangelist is always a good term to use. But Mark and Ricky, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Very good. Now, literally, it was supposed to be 3 o'clock, I understand, Mark, but this has just been released, the WordPress Economy study, and it was on embargo until I had it down until 2 o'clock today. So here we are at 3 o'clock, top of the hour. Maybe talk us through the WordPress Economy study, and then we'll kind of move into WP Engine and WordPress generally. But there's some big figures floating around in this particular report.
Absolutely, and as one of the leaders in the WordPress economy, we wanted to really, for the first time, make sure that we measured and understood the overall impact of it on businesses and on agencies and on the global web. And WordPress has obviously grown hugely in recent years. It now powers 41% of websites. So in many ways, it's kind of the unsung hero of the web. So we decided to partner with Dr. Chris Brower from the University of London and Vanson Bourne research to actually commission a study to look in detail about what the overall economic value of WordPress was, both in terms of its direct contribution and also the intangible contribution of the hundreds of thousands of developers in the community that obviously contribute to the project. And yes, sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say, so what were some of those key numbers that you came out? Because the trajectory is towards the $1 trillion mark, it looks like.
Absolutely. In terms of the global size of the industry, 597 billion last year, increasing by approximately 5% to 630 billion odd this year on a global basis. And from an Australian basis as well, that's approaching $20 billion. So obviously they're huge numbers, and just to give you some context around that as well, that's roughly the same size as the entire Apple App Store economy or the entire e-commerce economy, and bigger than AI and AR and Internet of Things all added together.
In context, making that comparison to all of that, I take it then WordPress is just a dominant player. Is there anyone even close in that regards?
Not in terms of overall market share, certainly. WordPress, as I say, is at 41%. It increased 14% through the pandemic alone. So it's continuing that inexorable rise, and we believe it will be 50% of the web by 2025. Yeah. So towards the end of last year, it actually overtook kind of hard-coded websites without a content management system for the first time. But the next biggest is around about 3-4% market share. So it's significantly bigger than anything else out there.
And before we move over to Ricky, and kind of he's more the pre-sales and evangelist, where he'll sort of talk maybe around the technical capabilities and trends there. But what's the sort of market like here in Australia? I think you touched on 20-something. I don't know, was it 20 billion in terms of the Australian market? So it's obviously a dominant player here in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, it's very strong, and it's very consistent with the US market in particular. We actually surveyed the US, the UK, and Australia, and the US and Australia were pretty much neck and neck on most aspects. Although one of the interesting trends that we do see is that in Australia specifically, we do seem to be leading on the headless implementations of WordPress. That is separating the front end of the website from the back end of the website. And that's viewed as really being the next generation of web technology. So Australia really seems to be jumping on board with that technology quickly, which we've witnessed through the global launch of our Atlas product range.
So in other words, there's a front face that people come to first, and that's a WordPress site. and then all the functionality and the smarts might be on another platform at the background. Is that right?
Exactly. The idea is to build on the rich history of WordPress as a content publishing tool that's been developed over, many years, since 2003. But also allow developers who these days want to work in different frameworks like JavaScript and so on to go and be a lot more agile in terms of how they build the front end of the site. And that really helps customers that are looking to service omnichannel, for example, where you're delivering content to a wide variety of different devices, not just websites or mobile, etc.
Well, it was interesting, Ricky. January 2019, I did a WP Engine interview with your chief of marketing. We were talking about the future of websites, fake news, and dark data, and there were some key trends coming out of that in terms of how websites are functioning and how critical they are. And it sounds like a long time ago, January 2019, but it's only two and a half years ago. The trends that you see, and in your role with WP Engine and the Evangelist role, we hear the Evangelist role in cybersecurity as well, in terms of, so we kind of get the term. The key sort of trends that you are seeing with your clients, because you're obviously client-facing there, what's bringing them to WordPress, and then the trends around the business. Australia's very small, medium-sized business orientated. Pretty much every business is getting a website now. It's relatively straightforward for them to get published using WordPress open source.
Yeah, and that, as far as trends, like the reason we're seeing the trend towards WordPress is because it's a very low barrier to get into WordPress. It's a free and open source software, so there's no actual cost to starting a basic website, apart from the cost of hosting and plugins and themes. But that low cost to entry is the big draw card compared to things like the proprietary systems that can charge you a lot in the licensing fees. And then there's just the absolute freedom to do whatever you like with that site. So the beauty of that is you can start as, whether you're a small startup, a small business, you can start with a very small, very basic site, and that site can then grow with you as your business grows, as you become a larger entity, as you need more functionality. You can integrate with the entire MarTech stack just about. You can add functionality, and if there's something, there's 58,000 WordPress plugins out there, or over 58,000 in the WordPress repository, and 11,000 themes. So there's a lot of scope there. And if it's not there, you can build it. You can get somebody to custom build it for you. So the ability to grow and to become, like a partner to your business as it grows is very, very appealing to most people.
How are you going with the developer side, and that as from the skill sets that you're finding? We obviously here in the Asia Pacific, but you'll find it global. I mean, I imagine you can get service providers from anywhere. The developer range, you mentioned 58,000 plugins and was it 11,000 templates? Yeah. That sounds like there's an opportunity there from a developer's perspective as well, to become a specialist. And a bit of disclosure, we're on WordPress platforms across all of our sites, including the marketplace. So it's quite it is functional. You can make quite a functional site on that, but sometimes the developers, they're becoming quite skilled, and there's a lot of skill sets there. How are you finding that part of the sector in terms of making sure that the client's needs are met as well?
Well, absolutely. There's I've got a saying which is that you can throw a rock and hit a WordPress developer with no problems at all. There's plenty, like a lot of people have cut their teeth on WordPress. It's very easy. PHP is the base for WordPress. There's a lot of PHP developers out there. It's very easy to learn. There's a lot of documentation. Being open source, it's very easy to learn, for anybody to learn how to use it. And of course, there's been a lot of, and as this WordPress economy is uncovered, there's a huge volume of money being generated, and that's primarily through developers and agencies who are creating these WordPress experiences for customers.
We've got a question here. What about Drupal? Any comments on Drupal?
Well, Drupal, so you got your three main CMSs, which would be Joomla, Drupal, and WordPress. If they're talking about like the market share, I believe Drupal is around about 1.3%, and that's rough. It's be below 2%, and the same with Joomla. So Joomla and Drupal are very low in the. They're both very good, CMSs for what they do. They've got a, like anything, it has a use and a purpose and a specializations that they're good at. It's just that we've seen WordPress obviously being adopted to 41% of the web. So it's just with the amount of plugins and themes and the community behind it, there's just a lot more scope for people to be able to come in easily and build out that solution.
And I suppose coming back to Mark, in terms of the large scale enterprises, where do you find the WordPress and WP Engine is sitting the strongest? Is it around that SMB market, or do you have large and sort of multinational enterprise on WordPress as well? How sort of broad is that in terms of its application?
It's actually both, and sometimes that surprises people a bit. But if you look at the top 10,000 sites on the web, even, WordPress still has a 36% market share there. So it's used by all sorts of, very large organizations as well. Some of the customers that, we serve here are people like, News Corporation, for example, Metcash, Nova Entertainment, Volvo Australia, so major blue chip brands. So, and for us, it's about a 50-50 contribution, from both. So, WordPress really has penetrated into, almost every vertical and, every size of company. It's used by 62% of the fastest 100 growing companies in America, according to Inc. magazine. So, you can find it everywhere. But in particular, we're seeing enterprise turn to it because typically with the traditional proprietary systems, they often have, delays in getting changes done, and that impacts their marketing team. So, they may need to involve internal tech teams and then they tend to run into like a backlog, and, it impacts their agility. And a lot of these companies are being, hurt by digital disruptors, and they're having to move forward faster than ever. Yeah. And, WordPress is really helping them to move their business forward faster. And Metcash is a great example of that. They're an existing customer of ours, and in the height of the pandemic in March 2020, all of the large retailers were mandated by the government to quickly set up an emergency supply system for the elderly and immunocompromised. And, Metcash quickly realized the only way they could do it. They'd never done e-commerce before. They had no common pricing. They had a network of independent retailers, and, they had to, come up with a way of doing this. And they found the only way they could do it was using WordPress and using WooCommerce, the e-commerce engine, from WordPress, and they actually got that delivered within 7 days in March 2020. So, it's a really good example, and there are many others of how those large organizations are turning to WordPress to help them move faster and get things done.
Interesting, and Ricky mentioned the availability of developers. So obviously, it's one thing to have a platform to be able to use it's functional, but you've got to be able to set that up and have people that know what they're doing to make it work the first time. Ricky, what are some of the, not so much the vulnerabilities, but the issues around the perception of WordPress? I think it's pretty much past, but even some people hold a perception that it's not secure, or there are sort of vulnerabilities with the amount of plugins that you've got there. We've not had experiences, but we are on top of it as best we can with the amount of plugins and keeping versions up to date. Is that kind of where those vulnerabilities can creep into WordPress sites in terms of maintaining the patching and the like?
Yeah, absolutely. Security, when they released the report, they stipulated the majority of the hacks that they've seen were through outdated software, so plugins, themes, core. I believe it was in 2019, 56% of all CMS applications were out of date. So keeping like anything, keeping it up to date and secure is the first thing there. And you've also got, social engineering and all sorts of things that can come into play as well. But it's all about it. Keeping it up to date and partnering with somebody like WP Engine, for example, who can help you with that, keep it up to date, make you aware of the vulnerabilities and give you next steps. But I mean, I think the main perception with WordPress was it was insecure because it was hacked the most. But that was only when you've got 41% of the web, you've got the majority of the site. So the stats are stacked against you right from the start. And so it's not really that it's insecure. It's no less insecure or any more insecure than any other software out there. It's just that it's got the majority share of the internet. So it just comes up a lot more.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And again, it is up to those the web administrators to make sure that that site is kept current. But it was a good segue actually there, Ricky, because my next question was going to be to Mark of who is WP Engine and how you've built a business around WordPress as an open source. Maybe introduce us to WP Engine, the size and the capability.
Absolutely. So WP Engine has been in business for about 10 years, and the business actually started, interestingly enough, by our founder Jason Cohen, who's now our CTO, and he was, a serial entrepreneur in between businesses at the time, and had a young family at home, and to try and keep himself connected in the IT community and so on, he started a blog. And he still has his blog today, and the blog was built on WordPress. And he quickly found that he was spending more time than he wanted to managing some of the things that Ricky's alluded to, security issues, caching issues, updating software, figuring out which third-party plugins to use, how to get analytics out of it and understand what's going on. And he decided to ask a few of his colleagues at the time if they knew of a better solution, because he didn't want to be doing that. He wanted to be writing content for his blog or spending time with his young family. And all of his friends and colleagues in the industry said, well, no, we haven't come across anyone that's got a better solution, but if you come across anyone, let us know. And like all great entrepreneurs, that was kind of the birth of WP Engine. So the business was set up to really help customers build, manage, and deploy WordPress sites. As I mentioned, we really see it as part of our purpose and passion, helping businesses move forward faster. And we also see that WordPress has the potential to really democratize web technologies as well, and then allow smaller businesses and brands to really compete, on a level playing field with some of the larger players. So, it's definitely an exciting time to be in the WordPress space.
And you provide a lot of the infrastructure in the background as well, Ricky. How do you approach a client in terms of their requirements? And often, most of them now want some sort of e-commerce capability as well. What type of you can even from the server level all the way through to the front end, or is there a limit?
Yeah, with WP Engine, we're a complete platform. So right from the infrastructure right through to we actually have Genesis framework, which is a theme. We work very heavily with the Gutenberg blocks. We have a partnership with Cloudflare, for example, with New Relic. We really encompass all of the things that we need to make sure that the WordPress site is fast, secure, and in the best shape possible to put you ahead of the competition.
What's the secret to the speed? Is it so WP Engine servers were recommended to us recently, which was an interesting recommendation. Is there anything that you're doing separately to others, or is it how they're structured and configured? Is it anything to do with that at the server level?
So, well, we start off with the best ingredients. So we partner with Google Cloud and AWS. So that's the best base you could have to start with. And then on top of that, we use all of our years of experience of working with WordPress and honing the software down to make sure that WordPress is as fast as possible and as secure as possible. So there's so many components to go into it, from our proprietary EverCache, which allows you to cache away from the plugins and at the server side, which is much more performant, to using Cloudflare as a CDN, to so many parts of keeping it fast and secure. It really is, we say it's the secret sauce, our special ingredients that go on top to make WordPress fast.
Because it can potentially the code can get messy in the background if you're sort of in there twinking around and playing around with it. Is that right? It's one of those things, because it's open source and you can tinker with it, it can get a little bit messy.
Absolutely, yeah. You can add million plugins. You can, there's a lot of ways that you can make it messy, and it's, with anything, the onus is partly on the owner of the website to take some responsibility for making sure that it is, coded correctly and observing best practices. But we're also there. Our support team don't just, concentrate on the infrastructure. We're also WordPress experts, and we can help advise on the best way forward, best practices. And then with things like our integration with New Relic, you can look into the code, the application, and find some of the problems very quickly and easily, and rectify them very quickly.
Okay. I'm kind of using this as a sounding board, obviously, for our own business as well. We've just applied Cloudflare as well, interestingly. Maybe a few takeaways out of the study. This was the first study of this kind for WordPress in terms of the economy. Mark, what's some of the other studies, and how does this fit into the promotional framework, I suppose, that WordPress is doing?
Some of the other studies that we've done, you mean?
Yeah, or is it these are all WP Engine studies, or they're
we've
focused on WordPress?
We've commissioned them, and we do a number of different pieces of independent research. We do a very popular annual research on Generation Z and how they compare with previous generations in terms of their attitudes and expectations from digital experiences, and that's obviously hugely important for us in terms of helping drive our product roadmap, but always gets a lot of public and consumer interest as well, as you call some of those things out. And we do separate things as well, where we look at things like artificial intelligence. We've done some research on enterprise CMS choices, and why large businesses make the decisions that they make. And that's thrown up some really interesting findings as well. So we are committed to being the most trusted company in WordPress, and we believe that part of that is delivering value above and beyond our platform in terms of insights and understanding that helps people understand where the market is going, and where the industry is going as well. Wonderful.
Well, it's forecast to be a $636 billion business by the end of 2021. And that was up from $597 billion the previous year. So you're looking at about that 5% annual growth rate, which is quite impressive. And that pretty much seems to be how the internet is growing in terms of certain aspects of business as well, and e-commerce. So on that note, and we will have a copy. I haven't actually received the embargoed version of the study. But it's titled the WordPress Economy, and WordPress set to grow to $636 billion this year, and fiercely competing with e-commerce. I suppose I wouldn't mind closing off just on general trends. What you see 2021. We're now in hybrid. I see the afternoon sun there in Brisbane's coming over. The general trends you're seeing this year, the hybrid workforce, COVID-19, has that generally been a good thing? I mean, some of the silver linings of a pandemic has been for those with digital businesses and online businesses have tended to do quite well. It sounds like WP Engine is experiencing the same thing, and you anticipate it's likely to continue?
Yeah, we've actually absolutely seen strong growth, and I think the move to digital is a positive one for most people. I think a lot of people are enjoying spending more time with their families and avoiding the morning commute, and ultimately technology enables that. But we obviously saw some significant progression in the existing trends that were going on in a very short space of time last year. For example, the number of customer interactions that were online went from 36 to 58% from 2019 to 2020. The global e-commerce market grew from 598 billion to 861 billion, which is 44% growth. And Eric Schmidt, who was previously chairman of Google, I should say, called it out quite well when he said it was 10 years of progress in a month. Yeah. And that's really how it feels, and obviously we're part of that, as are a lot of other technology companies. But at the same time, to your point, that brings other challenges which we and brands face, which is skill shortages, for example. And that's there's some challenges there, obviously, in the economy and for businesses as well.
Also, cybercrime has also increased. So I imagine the sites are under way more attack than what they would have been previously. So yeah, there's been challenges all around. I did have a question that's just popped back in terms of sovereignty. How do you find that sovereignty play occurring here in Australia, New Zealand as well? where the data is stored. You talked about you're in AWS and the like, and Google. Do you find that that's becoming part of the conversation at all?
It's a very short conversation these days, typically, because we have Australian data centers from both our providers, and we ensure that we undertake to adhere to data sovereignty requirements in terms of not moving that data to somewhere else without the customer's permission and so on. So it is something that still occasionally comes up, but it's a very short conversation typically.
Very good. Well, look, thank you so much. We've been joined by Mark Randall, the Country Manager and VP Sales for APAC, and Ricky Black, Pre-Sales Engineer and WordPress Evangelist. We'll put your contacts. I think most of the people will be able to get hold of you on LinkedIn if they want to reach out to WP Engine. But otherwise, thank you very much, Mark and Ricky. Appreciate your insights.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
We'll put you backstage and I'll close the show. Nice, easy one today. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Very interesting. And again, we'll put that out. And the last time we spoke was episode 132. We did an episode on our podcast show with WP Engine on the future of websites, fake news, and dark data. I'll put a link to that podcast in the show notes as well. As I do, just going to close off with the report of the day. This is on the marketplace today. The World Climate and Security Report 2021 has been released, and this is by the International Military Council on Climate and Security. And I've put this on the Australian Security Leaders Climate Group, the ASLCG, participating members of the IMCCS. We did an interview with John Blackburn about 6 or 8 weeks ago, and so we'll put that out. But catch up on the World Climate and Security Report. Pretty much follows on from what the Australian Security Leaders Climate Group was talking about as well. And just news of the day. Last week I covered on Friday the economic impact of laws that weaken encryption was commissioned by the Internet Society and released last week. Just interestingly, and that was covered on the Toller Act here in Australia. The AFP, the Australian Federal Police, I don't know how many search warrants they executed. They've arrested 224 people on 526 charges, with simultaneous raids occurred around the world as part of Operation Ironside, and they were using the Anom and the encrypted app, and they used the Toller Act to decrypt those, and we're monitoring it for up to 3 years. So it's a big outcome in terms of organised crime, with the number of people arrested in those charges. So it's definitely one to watch, but it definitely related directly back to the impact of laws that weaken encryption. So one to be aware of. So that's it from us today on our Tuesday afternoon episode. We'll be back on Friday morning. I've got Xstrata. I think we're looking at robotics and X-ray technology on Friday morning, but watch out. Otherwise, it's #MySecurityTV, or you can subscribe to mysec.tv. So thank you very much.